why am I getting divorced after a year and a half? I got married at 28 and I'm 29 and I'm currently getting a divorce. And I owe it to you guys to explain to you why I'm getting a divorce, because over 10 million of you guys watched me get married last year across Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and a lot other wedding content that I put out. I'm a lifestyle creator, and so, you know, you're gonna see my life, the ups, the downs, all of it. It is just a part of the process. But the reason why I do want to share why I'm getting divorced is because I got married to a narcissist unknowingly, and it was all built upon a lie. And I started talking about this on Threads and on my Twitter account, and I shared some of that to my Instagram stories. And since sharing that, I've gotten hundreds of DMs from women who are in the same situation or who have been in that situation. And so many of them have told me, I'm so grateful that you've been talking about this and that you've been transparent about this, because I didn't have the strength to leave. Now that I'm seeing that you are leaving so soon as well, I'm now inspired to leave. I do want to talk about this specifically when it comes to the narcissistic abuse part, because you don't even realize it's happening to you while it's happening to you. For so many of us, we just didn't even know what was happening while it was happening. I'm going to share as much as I can. And I think it's also important for us to remember that there's a difference between narcissistic personality disorder and having narcissistic traits, okay? Those are two different things. So let's start from the beginning. So in 2020, I met my husband on Hinge, and I was living in New York City at the time, and I was working from home. I was working on Wall Street, and I was pretty isolated. Here comes my husband on Hinge, and he looks great, and he seems like a pretty decent guy, and he really sold himself as like this faith-based guy and like really serious with like really good intentions. And you know, I bought it. Now, he was going to be starting a job on Wall Street as well at a different firm. And I like the fact that he was already in the industry, so he understood my work schedule, because I really did have a demanding schedule. Again, very normal guy, seemingly decent guy. The relationship is good to start. Towards the end of 2020, I started to pick up on the fact that our values weren't really aligned. And especially when it came to faith, there were some things that weren't adding up, right? So I did let him know that, hey, I think we should break up. I think we should part ways, because, you know, we're just not aligned. Now, he accepted it at first, but then he kept trying to message me and get back with me and saying, you know, I really don't understand. I really miss us and all of that. And then he starts to mention the fact that there's a ring fund, because, you know, he sees me as his future wife, that he's already gained 14% on. And I remember saying to him, like, I'm sorry, what does that have to do with anything? And so that is an example of, I think it's called love bombing. I am somebody who had a narcissistic parent. So I grew up on gaslighting. I grew up on manipulation. I grew up on love bombing. So that feels familiar to me. I didn't really have the language for what exactly my soon-to-be ex-husband was doing at the time, but now that I do have the language for it, I see it for what it was, right? If you have broken up with somebody, they seemingly accept it, but then they're coming back and they're like, okay, but I have 14% on a ring fund, right? They're trying to like lure you back in, right? They're trying to talk about all these things that they do for you or what they're doing for you to try to lure you back in. Now, I was resistant to his efforts. At the beginning of 2021, I do start a new job, and that job is actually at the firm that he's working at in a different capacity, but we've been broken up. We're still cordial. Now, he's still trying to get back with me. He's inserting himself in a way that's friendly, but like also clearly like he regrets that, you know, we parted ways. Again, I'm focusing on my new job. I'm just focusing on like getting my life together. He does become a source of support for me as I'm in this new job, because he's already familiar with this firm. He knows how to support people, and like he really is just a great friend to have. My birthday's in July, and yes, we're friends, we're not together, but he totally inserted himself into my birthday in a way that was like, you know, I'm her man, got me a cake and everything. And like, I appreciated all of those efforts, because at the end of the day, like, it's great to have somebody who is looking out for you and all those things. But again, I wasn't cognizant of the fact that, like, boundaries were not in place, right? And this is something that you have to be very aware of as a young woman when you're dealing with these men. Like, if you have broken up with somebody, right, there is no reason why they should still be coming around in that capacity. And if they keep coming around under the guise of friendship, right, because they love and care about you deeply as a friend, you need to be very careful. Because I was very convinced that, okay, he keeps showing up and he's just around because, like, you know, he just cares deeply about me and he just wants to be the person that's there for me. Now, despite the fact that we're broken up, anybody who has shown any kind of interest in me, anyone who he knows is interested in me, he's creating obstacles for these people. He would want to spend like every waking moment of the weekend with me, and I just had zero space. This is another sign that you are dealing with a narcissist. They do not give you any space. Keep in mind, the job that I had at this time on Wall Street, I was working at the desk from 6:30 a.m. until roughly about like 6:30 p.m., right? So I'm 12 hours on the desk, Monday to Friday, and every waking minute of the weekend, he would want to spend time with me. I don't really like people like that. I like my space. I do believe that I am an introvert, and I really do need to recharge, especially when I'm in an office setting and when I'm around people for so long. Like, I need like to decompress, right? I'm blessed now that I work from home and I don't need to like recharge as much, but I really needed my space. Now it is fall of 2021, and he is really lobbying, really pushing that we get back together. And he's even convinced another one of my friends that he really loves me, he really sees a future with me, and, you know, for me to give him a chance. He's very, very, very convincing. Like, this man, he could sell you anything. He is really good. He puts on a great show. And even my friend is like, wow, like, I don't know any guy who's ever loved you this much. Like, this man he is so committed. And I'm like, yep, that is true. And I'm like, you know what? I'll give him a chance. We did get back together. At this point in my life, I wasn't really going out. I was just focused on myself. So if you weren't already in my immediate circle, if I didn't already know you, chances are we were not going to meet, because I went to work, I went home, I went to the gym, and I was just like focused on myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just where my head was at. Now, by December of 2021, he starts applying to some jobs in Florida because he says he wants to move back to Florida potentially. By January of 2022, he gets a job offer in Florida, and he also does get another job offer in New York, which in my opinion was more aligned with what he wanted to do career-wise. But he decides that he's going to take the job in Florida. Now, he's trying to say to me, you know, am I coming with him to Florida? I'm like, absolutely not. I have my career here. At the time, I knew no one in Florida. No, I'm not going with you to Florida. And I had broken up with him because I was like, I'm not doing a long distance relationship. I just don't want that for myself. Now, after we got married, I found out that he actually told his coworkers and others, his friends and stuff, that the breakup was mutual when it wasn't, right? Because he was crying these crocodile tears, these fake tears. In retrospect, they were fake tears. They were narcissist tears when I told him that, look, I'm not moving to Florida with you. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not doing long distance. I have my career here. It is what it is. I think it was early February that he moved to Florida. Valentine's Day comes around 2022. Now, I think I'd gone out and I posted up like, you know, just in a cute dress or whatever. Who's calling my phone to find out if somebody took me out for Valentine's Day? My soon-to-be ex-husband. Mind you, I'm single, right? What did you think was gonna happen? Do you not think there is a line of men waiting to take me out? You're single, I'm single. It's none of your business. Why should I spend Valentine's Day alone, right? Like, you decided to move to Florida. I am living in New York. I'm gonna enjoy myself. You know what I'm saying? I tell him, look, you need to calm down and you need to focus on your life in Florida. There are a lot of baddies in Florida, right? Focus on the baddies in Florida. Let me live my life, right? Period. He's upset. He's not happy with it. It is what it is. Now, we didn't really talk for a while. I want to say like maybe about a month and a half, because I'd kind of cursed him out and I was like, look, you need to stop calling my phone. You need to leave me alone, like boundaries. He starts to weasel his way back in after a couple months of 2022 from the friendship angle. I started to post on TikTok in May. My first video that went viral on TikTok happened in the end of May. And in June of 2022, an anonymous account is created on Twitter. It has no posts. I'm still friendly with my soon-to-be ex-husband, right? He's still a friend to me, and that's that. I'm single in 2022. I'm focusing on myself. In August of 2022, I'm told by my boss that I'm being put up for early promotion. My soon-to-be ex-husband, at the time, I considered him to be one of my best friends because he always positioned himself to be like this source of support for me and just somebody who really loved me like unconditionally. Now, he was one of the two people that I let know that I was being put up for early promotion. Unbeknownst to me at the time, that same week, that anonymous Twitter account made some tweets using screenshots from my TikTok account, tweeting my firm and FINRA. Now, FINRA is the regulatory body that oversees broker dealers, etc. Again, there are two people that I told that I was up for early promotion. He's the only one who would have known to tag FINRA in those tweets in an attempt to bring me down or to get me fired or to mess up my chances of getting promoted. I don't find out about these tweets because I wasn't even tagged and I wasn't really on Twitter like that. I was called into the office by compliance at my job and they were telling me that, hey, there's this FINRA investigation going on because this random Twitter account made these tweets referencing your content and they tagged the firm and they tagged FINRA. They just told me, hey, just keep an eye out, you know, let us know if you have any idea who it could be. And they told me that they'd be doing their own kind of investigation as well. I remember my boss saying to me, go look into that, go figure out like what's going on there. And I just thought, okay, maybe it's just like some random hater. I just had no idea who could be behind this kind of account. Now, if I'm experiencing a certain type of harassment on the internet, I do loop in my lawyer just to get an assessment of like, what do you think this is? And I remember my lawyer saying to me upon reviewing the Twitter account and reviewing the tweet, he said, honestly, Christine, we've seen this before many times. This account was created specifically to try to bring you down. These tweets are laced with jealousy. This is a classic case of jealousy. And he actually asked me, did you get put up for promotion or something? Did you get a promotion? Because I've seen this a lot before and it's clearly laced with jealousy. And he said, is there anyone you can think of who would be jealous about you getting a promotion? And I said, well, I only told 2 people. And those people, you know, in my mind, I was like, they would never be jealous of me. Plus, only one of those people would have known to tag my firm and to tag FINRA. And I remember asking my soon-to-be ex-husband, I was like, hey, did you tell anybody else? But he was so supportive. He was just like, oh my gosh, the fact that somebody would even do that to you, they're such a hater. You guys, this man was like praying with me. He was like, I want to pray with you against like the attacks of the enemy. It's not funny. Nothing about this is funny, by the way, but it's like, at this point, all I can do is laugh, right? Because I was so convinced that this man was for me, right? He was praying with me, right? Now I know that he was behind that account. He didn't want me to get that early promotion because he knew that if I got promoted, there's no way I would be moving to Florida with him. And he had to figure out a way to get me to move to Florida because he just had to have me. Here this man is praying with me, being like, you know, I just don't know why anybody would try to do that to you. And like, you just have all these haters now and whatnot. And he created this account in June of 2022 when he saw that like, okay, like her TikTok is growing. More people are gonna find her. So I gotta make sure by any means necessary that she doesn't find somebody better. He's telling me that, you know what, you're on the internet, you're on TikTok now, people can find your TikTok, so it's just probably somebody who hates on you. You've always had haters. It could be anybody. And I'm like, yeah, you know what, you're right. It really could be anybody at the end of the day. Now, nothing came from that investigation. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get fired. But did those tweets mess up my chances for early promotion? Absolutely. So he was successful in his attempts. One thing that I did find out from my firm from this investigation process was that they had reason to believe that the person behind this account was a whistleblower. So they were a former employee and they were airing out their grievances while using me to do so. Now, January of 2023, I have a new challenge to focus on because the Black people at my firm have been getting underpaid now for 2 years. And we had clocked it the year before, but we were told that it was going to be corrected and we'd be made whole this current year, which was at the time 2023. That was not the case. In fact, it was even worse in 2023. Now, that kind of stuff doesn't sit well with me. And of course, I'm telling my soon-to-be ex-husband about what's going on because he is a friend of mine and he's very supportive. He's like, you know, trying to make sure that he could be there for me and just like support me in this time that I'm taking on this challenge of like pushing back against my firm. So one of the things that I do is I write a letter to the head of HR. Because of that letter that I wrote to the head of HR, an investigation was launched and they were like, yep, we messed up. People's pay needed to be revamped. Now, even though they fixed the pay of all of the Black employees that were hired through this program, it still wasn't the correct amount. We were still being significantly underpaid compared to our white peers for doing the same work. I was not happy with that solution because I knew that that was just them slapping a band-aid on a situation that literally needed surgery. So, you know, I lawyered up. One thing you're never going to do is you're never going to play with my money, especially when I worked for it. I've now taken on this legal battle with a major Wall Street institution. I am literally drained and exhausted. I'm fighting for myself and others who are not even willing to fight for themselves, right? Because there are a lot of people on Wall Street and in corporate America who are just not willing to stand up for themselves. But here I am putting in the good fight. Now, at the time, I did go to spend some time in LA because I'm just actually mentally drained. And it was good because I think it was like a different type of isolation. But at the same time, my soon-to-be ex-husband used this opportunity to really weasel himself back in as a source of support for me. He would fly in from Florida, spend some weekends in LA with me. He was really just like this great source of support for me and convinced me to get back together with him. And I was like, honestly, like he gets it. He understands what I'm going through. You know, and at this point, this man knows me well. He knows my family dynamics. He knows my triggers. He knows a lot about me, right? So he knows exactly what to say to get back in my life. Now he starts talking about getting a ring and getting engaged somewhere around, I want to say May or June of 2023. Truth be told, I should not have gotten engaged in the mental state that I was in 2023 because I was so drained by this battle. I was so exhausted for having to fight for what was clearly like standard. Like the fact that I'm fighting for equal pay for Black people in 2023, it was just mind-boggling. You know what I'm saying? And just the back and forth with the legal situation, I was exhausted. But of course, the whole talks of engagement and all of that, and like just like my soon-to-be ex-husband being there for me and just being this great source of support, it was just kind of like, oh my gosh, like he's so sweet. Again, I'm kind of in a daze in 2023. I'm dealing with a whole legal battle, but I'm still excited because it feels like, oh my gosh, at the end of the day, this is the light at the end of the tunnel. We get engaged in August. Now, you know, once you get engaged, everybody's asking you, when is the wedding? When is the wedding? When is the wedding? So you have all this external pressure, and my family, my friends, everything. I'm a type A person, right? I didn't end up getting a planner for my wedding. I ended up planning it myself. So I'm completely caught up with planning my wedding. I'm still dealing with this legal battle. I have now moved to Florida. I still have my place in New York, but now I'm in Florida. Thankfully now I know like 2 couples in Florida. So I do have a couple people there, but I'm now in a different state. I'm still dealing with this legal battle. I'm here planning a wedding. I'm also transitioning careers, right? Because when you go up against a firm in Wall Street, like best of luck if you think you're gonna have a career in Wall Street after that. But also that experience left such a bitter taste in my mouth that I decided that I didn't want to work on Wall Street anymore. So I'd made my mind up that I was done with the industry. Now, this legal battle, I'm not done with it until roughly February of 2024. And I also want to provide the context that I wanted to take this to litigation because the evidence was all there, the wrongdoing was there, and it would have been a case that would have really changed a lot of things for the industry and people underpaying Black people in the industry. But my soon-to-be ex-husband was a big advocate for me settling because he was like, you know what? I've seen how drained you've been. I've seen how exhausted you've been, and, you know, just prioritize your peace and move forward. In retrospect, right, he just wanted me to, you know, get paid quickly and just move along. That's what he wanted me to do. If it were up to me, I probably would have litigated, and my lawyers were ready and willing to litigate. Now, one thing to note is even before we got engaged, this is before premarital counseling, we had gone through this book where we were just kind of like figuring out like, what do we want out of life? Does this all make sense? Does it make sense to get married? For example, one of those questions in that book was like, okay, how many kids do you want? And I remember saying, okay, like I want 2 to 3 kids. And he was like, oh yeah, I want 2 to 3 kids. Essentially what he did the entire time, I did not know this. But again, he is a great actor. He deserves an Oscar. He was mirroring me the entire time. He knew my family dynamics. He knew what I liked. He knew what I didn't like. And he was presenting himself to be the type of person that I would want in a husband. Another thing to note is 2023, he suddenly gets very bulked up, very muscular. Now, he was always athletic, but he was always on the slimmer side, right? 2023, he has bulked up, right? I'm like, okay, you know, what happened to you? He just has this newfound passion for the gym, I guess. I mean, he always went to the gym, but like, he was never doing all of that, like weight, and like, he wasn't eating that amount of protein and all of that. Now, after we got married, that is when the mask started to slip. So he would say things like, I have to go to the gym and have all this protein and eat all this food to look good for you and to be bulked up for you. And I'm like, look good for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to look like that, like, you're the one who decided to bulk up like this, right? Like, you decided to do this to yourself. I never told you to do that. So you always want to pay attention when it comes to dating someone. If you find that they're like transforming themselves to be someone to match you a little bit too much, right? And it's not organic, it's not natural, it's not something that they ever were. That is something that you need to pay attention to. At the time, I just thought, you know what? He bulked up, he has this newfound passion for the gym. It is what it is. I didn't know that someone with narcissistic personality disorder, they are going to mirror their target like crazy. And he had to bulk up in such a way and transform himself because he had to be seen as worthy of being my partner. But once we got married, he's complaining about the way that he has to eat all this protein and eat all this food for me. And I'm like, well, if you don't want to do something, you shouldn't do it. Like, it's not a requirement to be with me, you know? Like, this is something that you put on yourself. He has really deep abandonment wounds, right? And this is something I always encouraged him to work on. And it really showed itself in one particular instance. This was in July of 2024. He was going to get some food at this particular place that I don't like eating at. He was asking me what I wanted to eat. I was like, look, you know, I don't even eat from there. I don't know why you're asking me what I want. And I told him, like, look, I'm gonna go home and I'm going to order something. And at the time we were out at this particular plaza, and it was gonna be easier for him to just drive there, get what he wanted, drive back home. And for me, it just would have been easier for me to just Uber home and order what I wanted. So I told him, look, I'm just gonna go home and Uber what I want. So I got out of the car and I was about to call my Uber on my phone. I kid you not, this man drives in front of me, wrestles my phone out of my hand with such force, so angrily that like I'm pushed, and he drives off in the parking lot. He makes a loop in the parking lot, actually, like a lunatic in anger. And at the time, I only had my personal phone. I didn't have my work phone. So I'm in the parking lot, no phone. He drives back around and I'm like, yo, what is wrong with you, sir? Like, what is wrong with you? He's like telling me that I can't just be walking out of the car on him. It's disrespectful. Again, abandonment wound triggered. That was the first, like, I've never seen him like that before. Narcissists, a lot of them have an abandonment wound. When I'm trying to address this with him and I'm trying to get him to take accountability, he's talking about the fact that he's doing all this stuff for my birthday. And I'm like, what does my birthday have to do with anything? My birthday has nothing to do with this, right? Like, you're trying to love bomb me. You're trying to gaslight me. You're trying to manipulate me when you need to take accountability for your actions. So he does some semblance of fake accountability and he says, you know, he's going to be working on himself. It's not going to happen again. I want to add this in because I think this is very important for people who might be in a work environment similar to Wall Street. Because I had worked on Wall Street for years, right? I had interned on Wall Street my junior year of college. I returned full time. A total of 5 years is what I spent on Wall Street. But you have to understand that there are a lot of narcissistic personalities on Wall Street. And I had normalized narcissists. Like, the guy I worked with the last 2 years I was working on Wall Street, I worked with him the most, right? Straight up narcissist. But you have to understand that on Wall Street specifically, and I'm not talking about just corporate America, because there is a big difference between Wall Street and corporate America, right? It's a different personality type. And in order for you to be successful on Wall Street, you do have to have narcissistic traits. But again, there's a big difference between having narcissistic traits and having narcissistic personality disorder. In order for you to be successful in most spheres of life, you do have to have narcissistic traits. There is a healthy amount of narcissistic traits that one can possess. But when you have a full-blown personality disorder, where you've had a psychotic break from reality, that's when things are now getting very dangerous. Now, he starts to say some random things, and this is after we got married. He would say things like, I get why the guys at the office pay for escorts and essentially pay for smecks and stuff like that. And I would be like, huh? I'm sorry, what kind of rhetoric is that? Like, our values are not aligned if you're saying stuff like that. And you never said anything like this prior to us being married. So like, where's this coming from? He would just be like, oh, you know, I was just like thinking about that. I'm like, okay. And, you know, as a woman, you know that that's loser mentality, right? Because you know that if a man has to pay for connection with a woman, it just means that he's a loser. He does not know how to build a connection with a woman. And so it's a loser mentality, right? And so I had to clock him about it. And I was like, yo, like, I don't know where you're getting this rhetoric from, and I don't know why you're saying this stuff, but you need to check yourself. Another thing that he starts to say is, you know, I get why guys choose simple women over career women, because now he has an issue with the fact that I'm a content creator. And he's throwing shade at me being a content creator and working as much as I do. And he would also say things like, people just don't know how hard it is to be an influencer husband. Okay. You knew what it was when you signed up, boo. Like, where's all of this coming from? Then he started to insert himself under the guise of helping me with my business, my influencer business. And he would always try to get me to accept like some low deals, some deals that didn't make any sense, when I knew my value and I knew my worth. And I was able to negotiate deals at like 4 times whatever rate he was trying to get on my behalf. And I was like, bro, what are you even doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you inserting yourself in my business? And why are you trying to get your wife paid less? And then he would throw shade about deals that I didn't take. A couple months ago, he was like, you know, you're the one who's turning down deals for 15K. And I'm like, huh? What's that supposed to mean? I'm not like you. I don't just take money for money, right? I understand that there's value to the work that I put out there, and I provide value to brands. And at the end of the day, this is my business. Why are you inserting yourself in it? And I essentially had to be like, look, respectfully, I need you to step away from inserting yourself into my business and what I'm doing. And then he would try to gaslight me and be like, you just don't value my opinion. You don't value my opinion. No, boo, you're trying to control me. You're jealous of me because you can't stand the fact that I could make one video for a brand and it's more than what you've earned in the entire month from your job. And instead of being happy for your wife and supporting your wife, you're trying to sabotage her career. Another thing that I didn't pick up on as a narcissistic trait is, I remember one time, like, I was crying and he got extremely angry with me. Like, he was so angered by the fact that I was shedding a tear. He started to raise his voice and yell at me. And that was when I was like, oh no, we need to get in counseling because something is wrong with you, sir. Now, I didn't know what it was at the time, but the therapist clocked it immediately. She said to him in that first session, she was like, do you understand what it means to have empathy? Because it feels like you don't understand empathy. He doesn't have the ability to be empathetic. It's this fake empathy. I never really understood that that was what was happening. So if he sees me crying, it gets him so angry because he's incapable of putting himself in other people's shoes. Narcissists lack empathy. Also, after we got married, he would constantly make degrading comments about women. He was really frustrated with the fact that women had to do so little in comparison to men. So for example, I remember him making a remark about the fact that my bridesmaids came into town before my wedding, like a couple days before, and they were able to hang out. And he was like, you know, my boys, you know, they had to come in like the day before. And he was like, you know, what do your bridesmaids even do? And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, like, why are you so mad that women don't have to do what men have to do necessarily? Like, why are you so upset that women and men have a different experience of life? Do you want to be a woman, sir? Because that's what it's giving. And another thing that really upset him that I found very strange was he didn't like that there were plus size models featured in Sports Illustrated. And I was trying to explain to him that, you know, representation matters. Women of all sizes need to be featured and people need to see bodies that look like them. But his whole argument was like, men can't do the same thing. Women need to be held to the same standard as men. He's revealing to me, once we're married, just how misogynistic he is, which was something he hid very, very, very well before our marriage. And every single day, the mask is slipping more and more and more. And I had a trip, a solo trip with Virgin Voyages. The night before, he has a mental breakdown. He's telling me how unhappy he is with life, how unhappy he is with his job, how upset he is that he can't go on this trip with me and everything. And his whole goal was to make sure that I had a very unpleasant trip and that I was thinking about how unhappy he was the entire trip. That is something that narcissists do. They don't want you to have any fun or have any enjoyment without them. They hate that. In addition to the degrading comments he would make about women, he was always trying to change me into a housewife. I know I'm the meal prep queen. You gotta understand that when I brought meal preps to the internet, this was for the corporate girlies. There are a lot of business girlies, corporate girlies who follow me. When I worked on Wall Street, yes, I did meal prep, but now I don't have to. I've meal prepped for brands and I've shown people how to meal prep. And he has been a natural beneficiary of my meal preps. And also, he really needed them because the dude wasn't eating healthy. He wasn't having vegetables, he wasn't having fruits. And so he really needed those. Apart from that, he would try to pressure me and shame me for not cooking every single day. Now, I'm the type of person I cook when I want. But if I don't feel like cooking, I'm not gonna cook because I don't need to. And when it comes to cleaning, I have always outsourced my cleaning. When I lived in New York, I outsourced my cleaning. Unless I genuinely want to clean my space, that is just what I do. But you know what it was when you signed up, right? And we talked about this. It never gave housewife. It was never that. Now, if you're wondering, well, why are you staying with this man while he's saying all these things? It's because there's constantly this gaslighting and this love bombing that's going on. He's constantly reminding me of things that he's done for me. That is just a small portion of the narcissistic abuse that I've experienced during this marriage. This is not the only reason why I'm filing for divorce. I came to find out some dirt on this man and what he's been doing behind my back for a while now. Out of respect for him, like, even though he doesn't deserve my respect, out of human decency, I'm not going to say it on here, but just know it is egregious. That's all I have to say on the topic. And I don't have to drag him, I don't have to shame him for what I found out, because one thing I know for sure is that everything done in the dark, it has to come to light at some point. Now, when I found out what I found out, I asked him, I said, hey, is there anything else you're lying to me about? I gave him the opportunity to be honest with me, because at the end of the day, I've been loyal, I've been faithful, I've honored our marriage. I meant my vows when I said them. So I gave him the opportunity to be honest with me, and he still couldn't do that. In fact, his response was, I'm so focused on trying to get you a Range Rover, because he knows that Range Rover is like one of my favorite cars ever. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? What does the Range Rover have to do with the lies that you've been telling me? That is classic narcissistic response. So I informed him that I would be filing for divorce and that it would be amicable and that we just do a clean split, sell the house, split the proceeds. What's yours is yours, what's mine is mine. Narcissists hate when they're no longer in control. And if you try to leave, they're gonna punish you for it. So once I let him know that I would be filing for divorce, he went into our joint account and he transferred money into his personal account. He wiped it clean. That included a New York tax return tied to my income, because he didn't earn any New York income in 2024. He transfers that to his personal account. And that is considered financial misconduct. If somebody lets you know that they're filing for divorce and you go into the joint account and you transfer money out and you wipe it clean, you have committed financial misconduct. Apart from that, he refused to release my phone lines because we were on a family plan. T-Mobile had called him. It's super easy for him to release my phone lines. He refused to release it because he wanted to surveil who I was texting, who I was calling. The only way I got him to release my phone lines was when I sent his mother a text updating her to let her know that I was aware of what was happening. Within an hour of me texting his mom, he released my phone lines. And then back to the financial misconduct with him taking out my New York tax return and other money from this joint account. His lawyer reprimanded him. His own lawyer reprimanded him for doing that. Like, you just don't do that. When he withdrew that money, he was hoping that that would put me in a tough situation. But dude, you married the finance baddie. Do you think I don't have money in other accounts? Do you think I was relying on this joint account? Do you think I tell you about all of my income when I clocked that you were jealous of me and trying to sabotage my career? That is standard classic behavior of a narcissist. When you try to leave them, they're going to try to financially abuse you, smear your name as well, because what he's been doing is talking to my friends and family, trying to create a narrative about me. They're going to try to keep anything hostage. They're going to try to surveil you. I caught him trying to log into the security cameras last week after I changed the passwords. So that is just standard, just narcissistic behavior. Now, in an effort to, I guess, get back at me after I told him I was filing for divorce and after he conducted financial misconduct and I called him out, he goes ahead and he files for divorce. What this does is it complicates things for him, because given that he has now filed the petition, we have to respond to that petition. And when we respond to that petition, unfortunately, all of his dirt gets put out there. And so what little dignity he could have walked away from this marriage with has now gone out of the window. Again, I wanted an amicable and a peaceful divorce. I really didn't want all of this nonsense. But with narcissists, chaos is how they thrive. They have to create drama. If I were him, knowing what I do know, I would have chosen to walk away from this marriage with dignity, whatever fragment of dignity he has left. But he chose narcissistic collapse, right? He chose ego and he chose to be childish. Now, could I have gotten on the internet and pretended everything was okay and put on a show for you guys? Absolutely. I can't do that and sleep well at night, and that is just not a part of my brand. If I'm telling you ladies to want better for yourselves, if I'm telling you to do better for yourself, if I'm telling you to stay healthy and wealthy, that is all a mentality, right? That is a mantra. So you have to want better for yourself. You have to walk away from the things that no longer serve you. And especially if you were literally a victim of a real life Joe Goldberg, like I was. Now, there are a couple people on IG who said, oh, you got married for content. And I wish I got married for content, honestly, because it cost me so much. I would love to get my 75K back from the wedding, honestly. That would have been invested. I would have had more money now. I would love to get back all the money that I've invested into this house, all the closets that I paid for, all the furniture that I've purchased, literally everything. I would love to get my money back. This has been such a loss for me. For you to get on the internet and try to think that people get married for content, I know I met my vows. My soon-to-be ex-husband, on the other hand, he didn't mean a word that he said. He was literally a real life Joe Goldberg. But let this be a reminder that you will rise again. I'm currently in the process of getting out of this marriage. We will see how my rise again goes. I hope this is helpful, and whenever I'm able to share more information, I will. I know the psychiatrists and the psychologists and the therapists will meet me in the comments and explain a lot of what I put down. And listen, it is never too late to walk away. Just like in finance, if you make a bad investment, cut your losses. It's not your fault. You looked at the financials, right? You looked at what was under the hood. You thought everything was good, but they put on a good show, right? They doctored the books. That happens sometimes, but you cut your losses when you recognize that what you're dealing with is garbage. If you take nothing else away from these videos, I hope that you learn to put yourself first and honor yourself and honor your boundaries, no matter the cost. Stay healthy and wealthy. So I got married at 28 and I'm divorcing at 29. A lot of the comments I've seen have shown me that not everyone has watched the full 5 parts and actually comprehends the difference between having narcissistic traits and narcissistic personality disorder. I would love for the psychologists, the psychiatrists, and the therapists to meet me in the comments and really explain to people, because a lot of you have been comparing this to your previous relationships and talking about seeing red flags and how I should have noticed this and I should have noticed that. And even before I get into the whole red flag argument, let me just say this. I'm not a person who goes around trying to manipulate others, right? I don't live my life trying to control outcomes. I don't live my life trying to play God. I don't do that. So when you're a person who operates in truth and empathy and love, when people are doing certain things to you, you don't really recognize that it's manipulation. You don't look for the evil in others when you're not an evil person. As a person who operates from a place of truth, the last thing on my mind was that this person would be trying to do me wrong. And that's what happens to a lot of us. I think if you're used to manipulating others, if you're used to controlling others, the signs would have been glaring for you, right? Because that is who you are. But that is not my character. It blows my mind that somebody would try to control somebody else. It blows my mind that somebody would try to lie to determine an outcome, especially when it comes to love and relationship and marriage. Truthfully speaking, I don't operate from that mind space. So when people say stuff like, well, you should have blocked him after you guys broke up, 2 things on this. First of all, if you break up with somebody and it's an amicable breakup, why do you need to block them? Especially since this person has shown that they're respectful and they've always shown themselves to be a decent individual. I've been in other relationships and I never had to block them. I don't need to block the people I've broken up with. When I'm moving forward, I'm moving forward. I don't need to block you, right? And just so you know, when you're dealing with a person with narcissistic personality disorder, I'm not just talking about narcissistic traits. They are going to create burners. I remember specifically when he moved to Florida, I told him on the phone when I had to curse him out, I was like, look, stop calling my phone or I'm going to block you. He heard my warning and he stopped. And what he did was he unfollowed me on Instagram. I unfollowed him back, and he was pretending that he had moved on with his life, but he was watching me from burners. So he was creating a facade. At the time, I didn't have that many people on Instagram, so I could see who was watching me. And his burners weren't even like proper burners because it was very clear who was watching my stories. Also, for you to get in the comments and tell people who might be dealing with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder to block them is very, very dangerous. These people have a level of obsession that's not normal. You're thinking about your ex who might have been obsessed with you a little bit. This is a next level of obsession. It's very meticulous, it's very calculated. So you're actually better off not blocking people with narcissistic personality disorder, because what happens is once they feel like they've lost access to you, they're going to go to extreme lengths to get to you. Hindsight is so easy when you are not the one being manipulated. If you've never actually been in a relationship with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, you don't have any grounds to say anything on this topic, honestly, because it's not the same thing as having narcissistic traits. And I'm gonna keep repeating myself when it comes to that, because I keep seeing these projections in the comments and you guys don't comprehend, right? And I get it. If you've never been there, you would not understand. A lot of them are actually sociopaths and psychopaths as well. So you're not dealing with a regular Joe here, okay? You're dealing with Joe Goldberg. For those of us who operate from a place of love and kindness, and those of us who are truly empathetic, we're not looking for the evil in people. Like, that's just not what we do. Like, I don't have the time to be looking at people's behavior that closely. I genuinely have never had the time. I've been building my career. I've been working on myself. Do you think I'm looking at every single detail and scrutinizing it, especially when somebody has put on such a great mask for me? No, I'm not doing that, because at the end of the day, I would never do that to somebody. I would never seek to manipulate. I would never seek to control, right? I'm not playing God in anybody's life. So you got to understand that when this happens to people, it happens to people who are not looking to manipulate others. So don't sit here and shame people in the comments for missing the signs when they were clearly manipulated. I do want to point out one other behavior that is a good telltale sign that you're dealing with a narcissist. It's something I did not understand at the time. After he was in Florida for a while, he told me things weren't really working out with the young women that he met in Florida, and he said they were very impressed with me. And I was very confused, because I was like, why do they know about me? I don't go around when I'm dating telling my new date about my ex. Like, that's so irrelevant. Apparently what he was doing was he was telling these women that he was dating that he used to date me. I asked him, I said, well, are you telling them about me? Why am I a topic of discussion for you and your new dates? And he would say, oh no, you're on TikTok, they've seen you, they follow your content, which is not necessarily true, because my content is niche, right? In my head, I'm like, well, perhaps they saw a video of mine on TikTok, but how would they know that you and I dated unless you brought it up? So what a lot of these narcissists will do is they will make sure that the next person they're trying to date is aware that, hey, I dated her. And it helps them to come off as more legitimate, because now the women can see, oh, okay, well, he dated her. She's a baddie. She has her life together. If she dated him, then he must be okay. And of course, we know that there are some women out there who will date you just because they know that a baddie dated you. And they're not necessarily dating you because they like you. They're dating you so that they can feel on the same level as you. What I do take accountability for is not trusting my gut from the very beginning, because everything looked right about him. He presented so well. My family loved him, my mother, my aunts, my friends. My friends even said to me, nobody you've dated has loved you so much. My parents were convinced, my family, you understand? So even when something felt off in my gut, I was listening to all of the voices around me, because I trusted that they knew better than me, because they were older. I remember raising specific things actually to my family and friends, and they would tell me, oh no, that's just the devil trying to destroy what you have going on. And they would tell me things like, oh no, the devil hates marriages, so that's just the devil putting something in your head. A lot of people will use religion to control you and to keep you bound to something that was never built on truth in the first place. Trust your gut. And lastly, there have been a lot of men in the comments talking about the fact that women can be narcissists as well. And that is absolutely true. We never denied that, right? My platform is primarily for women. And so that is who I speak to on my platform. There are totally female narcissists. And so if you have a story to share about dealing with a female narcissist, I encourage you to share it in the comments. I'm just speaking to my audience because we are primarily women here. For everyone saying, don't put your business out there, keep it private, it is what it is. Again, I have a platform. At the end of the day, thank God I am the only one hurting from this situation. And if my pain serves the purpose of inspiring hundreds of thousands of women who follow me across all of my platforms, then it was for a reason greater than myself. And that's what I've come to realize. Yeah, it sucks for me, but I'm gonna be okay. I was flourishing when he found me, and he wouldn't leave me alone at any cost. I'm the one who went through this horrible situation. And so many women have benefited from my transparency, and I'm so happy for that, because at the end of the day, I know that this was bigger than myself. This is my platform, and I know God gave it to me for a reason. So I'm not going to hide and pretend that things are okay. I'm going to be transparent. That is me stewarding the community of women that I've been blessed with. Again, if you are somebody in a similar situation, don't let anybody shame you for missing the signs. You're a good person. You wouldn't manipulate others. You don't think like an evil person. Of course, you're not going to look at other people's actions and immediately see the evil in them, because that's just not who you are. And if they want to shame you for being a loving and empathetic person, let them do that. Stay healthy and wealthy. I got married at 28 and I'm divorcing at 29. Part 7. For those of you bringing up forgiveness and reconciliation, I need you to understand that I am actually a very forgiving person. I understand that I don't need to take revenge on anyone. I have never needed to do that, because I understand that in this life, you reap what you sow. Anyone who's ever wronged me, they have suffered the consequences, and I've seen it with my own eyes, because God has never played about me. But what you need to understand is that I have extended a level of grace in this situation that most people wouldn't. If you really knew what this man was doing behind my back, you would be like, girl, you're giving him that much grace? Again, that is just me being a decent human being trying to preserve what little dignity he has left, even though he truthfully doesn't deserve it. And to the men in my comments talking about women think they're so perfect and women are so evil for wanting a divorce, if you truly knew what he was doing behind my back, you would not be defending him. I promise you. You would pull back your comments very swiftly. You would. Because I really don't think you would want to be caught defending that type of behavior. Now, speaking about narcissism, and I'm speaking directly to the women right now, because again, my platform is primarily for women. If you are in a relationship with a narcissist, I need you to understand that the core of narcissism is self-hatred and shame. Do you understand what I'm saying? The core of a true narcissist, someone with narcissistic personality disorder, the core of it is self-hatred and shame, okay? A man who hates himself and has shame about who he is will not protect you. He is going to lie to you, and he's going to betray you, and he will look you in the face and tell you that he loves you every single day. He will try to convince you that nobody will ever love you more than him. That is not real love. That is his twisted version of love, filtered through shame and denial. And that version of love, it will never keep you safe. These men know who they are at the core. They do a great job of putting on a show. The mask will start to slip once you're married, or once you're locked in with them on some level where they feel like you're not going to go anywhere. Usually you've gotten a house with them, as in my case. You're married, as in my case. And for some women, they have kids with them. They know who they are at the core. They're just in denial about it. They're often living double lives because they're not comfortable with their true identity. I'm telling you this because I've lived it. Our couples therapist clocked it immediately, and that's when I was still in denial about the fact that he could be a narcissist. I was still believing the lies. He had been going to his own individual therapist. But what you need to understand is that individual therapy does not help people with narcissistic personality disorder. They manipulate the therapists. And therapists can only work with what you give them. So if you don't give them truth, they're not going to be able to help you. People with narcissistic personality disorder, they perform, they charm, they lie. They don't even tell themselves the truth. If you lie to yourself, you can never be truthful with others. And before you hop in the comments trying to play devil's advocate and defending a man that you don't even know, I want you to ask yourself this question. What would be so egregious that a woman like me, who got married in front of millions, who's always preached marriage, I've never been for hookup culture, ever. What would be so egregious that I would decide to make this decision publicly? I've never been reckless with my platform, so I want you to really consider that. What could it really be that would make me say enough is enough and I want out of this marriage? And again, for the men and women who are in the comments saying, I must have gone into this marriage knowing that I wanted a divorce to get something from this man, consider this. I am the finance baddie. I know all about prenups. I chose not to get one because I believe that marriage is for life. I got into this marriage not intending to divorce. Yes, he is a high earner, but I've always made more money than him, and the tax returns show it. So who do you think a prenup would have benefited more? Additionally, in my industry, there's no cap on what you can earn. It's totally up to you. So who stood to lose more in this situation? Who is more likely to get alimony in this situation? What would it take for a woman like me to leave? And not just leave, but leave with integrity, choosing to not expose all of the details, even though it would be well within my rights to do so. Consider that. Again, I'm choosing to be a decent human being and to preserve his dignity. I have the receipts. My lawyers have the receipts. Why am I giving him the grace that he doesn't deserve? Because I am not him. At the end of the day, I know the truth will be exposed, and it doesn't have to be me who exposes it, because the truth always comes out in the end. A lot of women have left comments about being stuck in situations like this and not having the means to get themselves out of it. And you've asked me to put together some sort of financial guide or some sort of workshop to really help you get yourself out of this situation. I now understand for myself why a lot of people stay in marriages, because divorce is actually very expensive. Every week I send thousands of dollars to my lawyer. I'm going to be working on something to help you prepare yourself in case you ever get into a situation like this. If you are in a situation like this, this should help you get out of it. But in the meantime, if you are dealing with somebody who wants you to stop working, especially if you were an ambitious and career-oriented person, I want you to be very careful. I want you to be very critical of what they might be trying to do. Some people use that as a means to trap you. It's not protection for some people. Depending on the person that you're dealing with, it could be a trap, right? It could be a means to control you. So I want you to be very, very careful. And lastly, to anyone who's been betrayed on this level, men or women, I don't want you to be discouraged. Remember, it wasn't Peter who brought Jesus to the cross, it was Judas. Betrayal often serves the purpose of waking you up. So cry if you need to, but you can't stay there. You have to channel that pain into your purpose. So in the gym, in your business, in your healing, whatever that might be, let your results speak for you. Let your elevation haunt the people who try to destroy you. There has not been a single person who has betrayed me who has not ended up regretting their decision. And it's not because I got revenge. It's because they had to sit there and watch me become everything they tried to break. So you don't stay stuck in betrayal. You use it. You let it light a fire under you, and you let it remind you of who you are. And then you get to work, because nothing haunts a Judas more than watching the woman he tried to destroy step into everything he was never man enough to handle. Stay healthy and wealthy. I got married at 28 and I'm divorcing at 29, part 8. And let me just say this, I don't love the title of being a wife more than I love myself. I don't love the idea of marriage more than I love being respected. As soon as I had proof that there was infidelity, I called the divorce attorney immediately. No hesitation, because that is how much I love myself. A lot of people love the idea of marriage more than they love their own freedom. They love it more than they love their own dignity. That is idolatry. You've made an idol out of marriage. And for the religious folks who keep coming to the comments saying, God hates divorce, God hates divorce. A lot of you guys know the scripture, but you don't know how to interpret things. Infidelity is what actually breaks the covenant of marriage. It's not the divorce, okay? The divorce is a legal process. You did some legal paperwork to get married, and the divorce is undoing that legal process. The cheating, the betrayal, that is what breaks the marriage. So the moment they stepped out on you, the marriage was already spiritually broken. So you encouraging people to not divorce is kind of silly, especially when you don't know all the facts. There are a lot of women in these comments who are going through something similar, or they've been in something similar and they're trying to get out. Before you use scripture to shame them, ask yourself, am I quoting God, or am I just projecting my fear of being alone? And am I just projecting my idolization of marriage? A lot of you guys are legally married, but you are spiritually single, and you know it. You signed the paperwork, but there's no love, there's no trust, there's nothing. real in your marriages. So you get on the internet and you project, but you've been single for decades. And the reason why it's so easy for you to project onto somebody who is willing to walk away the moment they have become aware of what's been going on is because it now makes you question your own decisions, right? You know you made the wrong choice by staying for longer than you should have. You don't have to project your poor decisions onto me. Use me as an example and use me as proof that you can walk away and choose yourself. And by the way, the comments about Jesus and how we need to use Jesus as an example and follow in his footsteps, do you realize that you're talking about Jesus like he was a doormat? Like, did we read the same Bible? Because the Jesus in the Bible, he flipped tables, right? He called out hypocrisy. He forgave people, but he said, do not throw your pearls before the swine. And what does that mean? If you're in a marriage and you're letting your man or your woman walk all over you, do whatever, and you're in covenant, what kind of marriage is that? That's a legal agreement, right? That's a piece of paper that you sign. That's what you have, actually. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Do we understand the meaning of forgiveness? Let me know if you want a video on forgiveness. I am not in the business of staying and suffering in silence to keep up an image. For the people saying that he seems so perfect, so innocent, absolutely. That is exactly how deception works. It wouldn't be deception if he didn't seem perfect or if he didn't seem innocent. The devil himself parades as an angel of light. Another comment I've seen from the religious police is, if you really knew God, this wouldn't have happened to you. And again, this shows me that you are a religious person. Like, you probably have no relationship with God. You probably don't even understand whatever Bible that you're reading. Judas sat at the table with Jesus and still betrayed him. He prayed with him, he ate with him, and he still betrayed him. If Jesus could be betrayed, the same Jesus you're telling me about in the comments, right? What makes you think you can't be betrayed? Is it not clocking to you that you too can be betrayed and deceived? That's the lesson in this entire story time. Like, it could happen to any of us. We need to stop pretending that abuse only happens to women who are weak and lost, because that is just not true. Some of us are targeted because we are loving, we are empathetic, we are powerful. Consider it a blessing if you've never been targeted by a narcissist. Count your blessings and move on. Say thank God. And for people asking, you know, am I not embarrassed to be getting a divorce so soon? No, I'm actually so grateful. I'm so relieved that God showed me his true colors early on. There's so many people who are stuck in marriages. They ended up with children and the situation is just a little bit more complicated. Even if they could leave, they decided to stay because they considered having a marriage that ended the most embarrassing thing. When somebody lies to your face, disrespects you, is sleeping with other people outside of you, you walk away. That's disrespectful. They're putting you at risk. You don't wait for them to care. You choose to care about yourself. And if you've been in a situation like this for a very long time, I hope my story inspires you and lets you know that you can leave. If I can leave after a year and a half and you've been dealing with infidelity, with lies, with manipulation for decades, I hope this gives you the little oomph you needed to choose yourself, because it's about time that you choose yourself. You should not be embarrassed because your marriage is ending. The most embarrassing thing you can do is to build a life on deception. That is embarrassing. The only thing you should be embarrassed about is tolerating disrespect for longer than you should have. The only thing you should be embarrassed about is not choosing yourself when the person that you committed to has repeatedly not chosen you. They've chosen themselves over and over and over again. They haven't chosen you. So I hope you choose you. Stay healthy and wealthy. I got married at 28 and I'm divorcing at 29, part 9. For my religious police. For me personally, I will have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but I will expose them. Okay? Narcissistic abuse requires your silence in order to survive, and that is intentional. It's not always loud, it's not always violent, it's psychological, it's strategic, and it's designed to keep you confused. And because people who have narcissistic personality disorder are often charming in public, people are not going to believe you unless you speak up. Staying silent does not protect you. It protects the narcissist. That silence is where the abuse grows and the cycle will continue. You can choose to suffer in silence if you want, but I'm going to continue to call it out because I'm fully aware that abusers thrive in the silence of their victims. Now, one thing that I think is core and essential and that I did not know the gravity of before dealing with a narcissist, a true narcissist. Again, we're talking about somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. Pay attention to people who have unresolved abandonment wounds. In my case, he was adopted, and he told me that he always felt like an outsider in his family. And he would repeat the same stories over and over again. One example of this was he told me that for Christmas, his sister got a computer and he got a hat. He was adopted, and not just that, the family that he was adopted into never treated him the same as his sister who was not adopted. And one of the things he would tell me is he always believed that he had to perform to receive love. And he did overachieve in life. He got into the top US boarding school. He got into multiple Ivy League universities. He had a Wall Street internship from his sophomore year. So he's been overachieving in life. But his drive and his ambition, it wasn't passion. It was coming from a place of pain. So he built his entire identity around being too valuable to abandon. And when somebody builds their entire identity around being too valuable to abandon, they forfeit authenticity. Because it's a performance. They become a performer. They study you. They mirror you. They shapeshift and become your ideal partner. And they don't do this out of love. It's done out of fear of being abandoned by you. Here are some examples of how this abandonment wound actually showed up. I remember breaking up with him, and at the time we were living in New York City, and he threatened to unalive himself over the balcony in New York City. And you have to understand that actually happens in New York City. People do that. And so suddenly I wasn't just trying to leave, I was trying to not be responsible for somebody unaliving themselves. And it's also one of the reasons why it's been so hard for me to separate myself from him, because I know he has this deep fear of being abandoned, and I didn't want him to harm himself. What I'm able to see now, and I hope that you're able to see this too if you're in a similar situation, is that that is a form of control. It is emotional manipulation. Another way this abandonment wound shows up is when they try to lock you in early. I've said this before, but they like to do it through marriage, through getting a house with you, through having kids with you. And that all sounds perfectly normal, right? But they like to do it on an accelerated timeline. They build a life around keeping you close because they do not want to be abandoned by you. And it seems perfectly normal to everyone else on the outside, but if you know, you know. So the more obligations and ties that you have to them, the safer they will feel. They're going to become a version of themselves that they believe you cannot abandon. He started to bulk up. He got super muscular, non-stop protein like it was a job. And I just thought he had this newfound passion for lifting weights. After we got married, he was complaining about all the food he has to eat and all the protein he has to consume to maintain this image. He studied me. He asked me about the people that I dated previously. Everybody was at least 6 foot. Everybody was athletic. Everybody had muscles, right? So they're going to study the people that you dated previously, and they're going to try to match up or be better because they want to be somebody that you cannot abandon. People with abandonment wounds will also sabotage anything that they believe will pull you away from them. I already told you guys about how he tried to sabotage my career on Wall Street. His fear being that if I got promoted, I would stay in New York and he would be abandoned. And another time when we weren't engaged yet, I'd gone to a conference and I met this public figure. He had always looked up to this guy. He loved his podcast, he loved his YouTube, he loved his content, and he was always talking about him. This public figure had connected with me on socials and was trying to take me out to dinner. I let him know that I'm in a relationship right now, but I'm happy to connect business-wise. When this is happening, I'm completely transparent with my boyfriend at the time. Now, the moment my boyfriend at the time realized that this public figure was trying to take me out, he unfollowed this guy. I'm telling you, this is somebody who he looked up to for years. He's the one who told me about his content. He was always listening to this guy's podcast. He stopped listening to the podcast. He was like, nope, I'm done. I can't. Like, I don't like him anymore. He no longer watches his content. And I was like, why is all of that necessary? He was completely respectful. He completely understood that I was in a relationship. And I've shown you the messages. Nothing about it was disrespectful. But it wasn't about that. It was about the fact that a multimillionaire public figure was trying to take me out to dinner. And this triggered his abandonment wound because he sees this public figure as somebody who could potentially be the reason that I would abandon him down the line. And what's so funny about it is despite the fact that he was no longer supporting this public figure, he was running around telling his friends and his coworkers that this person asked me out on a date. So he used the opportunity for bragging rights to be like, well, my girl's being asked out by this person, but he no longer supports him because he sees him as a threat. And that is what narcissism looks like. It's insecurity dressed up as confidence. Now, was he aware of his abandonment issues? Yes, he was aware of his abandonment issues. He's actually been seeing a therapist, but he hasn't been dealing with his abandonment wounds with the therapist. And again, individual therapy rarely works for people with narcissistic personality disorder because there's nobody there to ground them and keep them in check with reality. They don't take the mask off. They don't take it off in therapy. So when I picked up on certain things after we got married and I suggested that we go to couples therapy, it was the best decision that I ever made. Because as I said, the couples therapist immediately clocked that he lacked empathy. So people with narcissistic personality disorder, they lack empathy. They can perform it, but it's a very surface level performance. Now, if you've been with somebody who has these deep abandonment wounds, you already know how hard it is to leave. Even if they're hurting you, you don't want to be the one who abandons them because you already know that they have those childhood triggers. So there's a part of you that wants to protect that little child inside of them because you know that they're hurting, but you're doing it out of pity and out of fear of being the one who abandons him next. Do not let the guilt stop you from leaving a situation that is harming you. Do not allow it to stop you. So many of us were abandoned by our parents, by our families as children, and we chose to heal instead of hurting others. So many of us were neglected emotionally, physically by our parents. In my case, I chose to heal. So what happens is a lot of us, we choose to protect others. We choose to take care of others because we don't want them to feel what we felt as children. But you have to remember that it is a choice. Whatever you do with your pain, it's a choice. Some of us chose to heal and we chose to be better people, but people with NPD, they do not choose healing. They choose to weaponize their wounds against the people closest to them. And if you're their partner, you're getting the worst of it. They're going to sabotage your career, your peace, your joy. Because the more you grow and the more that you thrive, it triggers that abandonment wound in them. Because they believe that you're going to abandon them if you achieve a certain level of success. In my case, he created fake accounts. He left hate comments on my videos from fake accounts. He would attempt to suppress my content because his fear was if I get too big, I'm going to abandon him. So despite the fact that I was a content creator before we got married, and he was fully aware of that, he was trying to sabotage my growth as a creator as well. What's funny about it is that he benefited from people knowing who I was, because he would come home and tell me that his clients follow me and they would tell him, oh, your wife is the Finance Baddie, I love her content. So he gets a little kick out of it, right? It's a little ego boost for him, but at the same time, his abandonment wound is triggered the more that he sees me rising. And even right now as we speak, instead of acknowledging his wrongdoing, he's trying to make threats to sabotage my career, because his objective right now is to get me down so bad that I have no choice but to stay with him. But he picked the wrong one. Now, if you're going through something like this and you're leaving the situation, what I will say is that the peace in all of this is knowing that you never knew the real them. You knew and you loved the mask, the show that they put on. You did not love the person because they never showed you who they truly were. That's the saddest part of all of this, because they never love themselves enough to face themselves. So they lie, especially to themselves, and they will lie to you up until the end. I do pray for his healing. I pray that him and others suffering from NPD will choose to go back to that little wounded child. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with the people who are trying to help you. You have to face yourself in order to heal. Until you acknowledge the wounds and until you're able to see the pain, the abandonment, the betrayal for what it was, until you're able to confess what has taken place and how it's made you feel, healing will not take place. In any event, his unresolved trauma and pain was never mine to bear. If you're in a similar situation, remember that you are not his therapist and you are not his savior. So where are we now? He's threatening to sabotage my career to get me to be quiet about his wrongdoing. Now, I have withheld a lot of information about what has taken place here. I have honestly given so much grace. I've honored him as much as I can despite everything that he's put me through. And if you knew, I have chosen to withhold that information so far. But I also know that the truth is what sets people free. Him and his lawyer have said that this little story time has already gone viral. And to that I say, if you call this viral, wait until I finish the story time with my receipts. I really haven't gotten to the meat of the matter. I really haven't given you guys the full tea out of kindness. And I am a really kind person until I'm not. Now, he wouldn't be a true narcissist if he didn't try to silence me and make himself a victim in a situation where he was the orchestrator of his own undoing. But you know what? I dare him to F around and find out. Stay healthy and wealthy. I got married at 28 and I'm divorcing at 29, part 10. You are more susceptible to getting yourself entangled with a true narcissist if you have a narcissistic parent like myself. Also, if people in your family are big on protecting lies and abuse and are big on family image as opposed to holding people accountable for their wrongdoing, you are being groomed by your family to accept abuse and to be silent about the abuse that you face. So my mother is pushing for reconciliation. But why would I want to reconcile with a man who not only misrepresented his sexuality to me, he performed and presented himself as a heterosexual man and explicitly claimed that identity while secretly engaging in sexual relationships with men behind my back during our marriage? What reason do I have to reconcile with somebody who misrepresented who they were and exposed me to STDs without my knowledge or consent? What kind of mother or father encourages their child to reconcile and stay in that situation? the type of mother who never had the strength to choose herself, and the type of father who fears being exposed himself. If you have a narcissistic father like myself who only knows how to gaslight you and love bomb you in order to control you, you may have subconsciously normalized his behavior, and so that kind of behavior has become familiar to you. Often we are attracted to what's familiar. So when you come across people like your narcissistic parent or other family members who exhibit those narcissistic traits, if you haven't yet recognized narcissism for what it is, you are more likely to fall prey to their manipulation. As you all know, I'm going through a divorce. You would think that a father would be protective of his daughter and would be supportive of her. But no, not only has he called me multiple times to try to control me, he calls my friend 2 days ago and he tells her to tell me that the family is so disappointed in me. Not only are they disappointed that I'm getting a divorce, they are disappointed that I'm being transparent about the narcissistic abuse that I have faced. And he accused me of putting all the family business on the internet. And he kept emphasizing to my friend that the family is disappointed in me. The reason why he kept emphasizing the disappointment is because he knows that I grew up to be a people pleaser. His wife, who is my mother, never chose herself. She stayed married to him. They are married to this day, despite the fact that they've been separated for pretty much my entire life. The only reason that they are still legally married has to do with the fact that he's a pastor and is trying to keep up appearances. He has controlled her and manipulated her in different ways over the years, and she's fallen prey to it, and she never stood up in her truth. Now that I'm an adult and I'm choosing myself and I'm choosing to be vocal about the narcissistic abuse I've faced, my father feels threatened and my mother feels triggered. My father is trying to control me the way that he has controlled my mother over the years, but he forgets that I am not my mother. I've gotten a lot of direct messages from women who say that they want to share their story, but they're afraid that their family and their friends will turn on them. What I will say is that that is to be expected, especially if you come from a family that has historically protected darkness. But you have to remember that the truth is your power. And when people try to gaslight you and manipulate you and control you for speaking the truth and exposing darkness, that says more about them than it does about you. And if, like myself, you're from a family that likes to weaponize religion and spiritually manipulate you, you can't really expect support. My own father, the reverend, the pastor, is using scripture to silence me. People who weaponize scripture to silence you when you faced abuse are abusing their religion. That is called spiritual manipulation. You will notice these signs in friends and family members who you may have thought were perfectly normal. Anyone who's trying to silence you about the abuse that you faced is ultimately trying to protect a version of themselves that they fear could be exposed. It is not about you. They're projecting their own insecurities onto you. In response to me exposing the narcissistic abuse that I faced, in order to help the hundreds of thousands of women who follow me, my father called me and accused me of having a mental breakdown because he believes that projecting mental illness onto me will silence me. Whenever people use those tactics to silence you, that is your indication that you are doing the right thing. I'm exposing the narcissistic abuse that I have faced, and for some reason, my narcissistic father feels threatened by that exposure. So when you come forward with your stories and you're met with resistance, you have to ask yourself, why would somebody be so threatened that I'm speaking the truth and shedding light on a dark situation? That is because they feel exposed. They fear that if you're exposing your abuser, they're next. But if you have nothing to hide, and if you're a truthful and honest person who lives in your truth, in addition to that, I have my mother who's been pushing me to reconcile with the weapon that was formed against me. She confuses forgiveness with reconciliation. You can forgive, but you are not obligated to reconcile with the people who deceived you, manipulated you, abused you, and tried to sabotage your life. Also, forgiveness does not mean that you are silent about the abuse that you face. You have to understand who is criticizing you and what that means. So for myself, having a mother who never chose herself, who chose to stay married to a man who never valued her, who mistreated her and manipulated her for her entire life, she never chose herself, so she will never choose me. She will always choose the side of the abuser. She never protected herself, so she will never protect me. If you have maternal figures like that in your life, you have to understand that they are going to weaponize their tears against you. They're going to try to emotionally manipulate you. And again, this is projection, because deep down, they know that they made the wrong decision by staying. They know that they made the wrong decision by not choosing themselves. And so when they see you choosing yourself and you walking away from a situation that was harmful to you, suddenly they are questioning themselves. You choosing yourself and speaking your truth and shining light on the darkness, it triggers them. Their projections onto you come from a place of guilt because they haven't lived out the fullness of their lives because they chose to remain silent and in covenant with somebody who never honored them. When you go through situations like this and you start to expose the darkness, you start to realize who actually cared about you and who cared about you so long as they could control you. So long as you are controllable and you're able to be managed by some parents, by even some friends. They will show you care and love and affection and support. But as soon as you choose yourself and you no longer fall prey to their manipulation, you no longer fall prey to the spiritual abuse and the spiritual manipulation, as soon as you expose the darkness, they start to call you unstable. They accuse you of having a mental breakdown, and they will do anything to try to control you and keep you silent about the abuse that you faced. They will try to bully you in the most insane ways. My own father told my friend on the phone 2 days ago when he called her that he believes that my job as a lifestyle content creator is corn. What's so funny about it is that he didn't consider it corn before I was getting a divorce. He didn't consider it corn before I started exposing the narcissistic abuse that I faced. So he's attempting to slut shame me and belittle my career. And this man pastors multiple churches. That's a real man of God, right? Be very careful of religious men. And when I say religious, I mean the people who know scripture like the back of their hand, but they do not practice what they preach. These people do not have any relationship with God. A lot of people with narcissistic personality disorder hide behind faith and religion. You've seen that with my soon-to-be ex-husband, and you've seen that with my father. Please learn from my story. If you have a narcissistic parent, and if you have maternal figures in your life who've never chosen themselves, they've always chosen marriage, and they've always chosen the abusive man over themselves, you are susceptible to falling prey to narcissistic manipulation. Love bombing, gaslighting, manipulation, control, all of that has become familiar to you because that is the family structure you grew up in. A lot of women have DM'd me about wanting to expose the narcissistic abuse they faced, but they're afraid of their abuser seeking legal action. In my case with my soon-to-be ex-husband, he's threatening to pursue legal action for defamation. But what he and others with NPD fail to understand is that if what you're saying is true and verifiable, it's not defamation. In fact, attempting to sue someone for defamation when you're the one who did the harm will always backfire legally, especially when we start discovery. So emails, medical records, text messages, all of it. If you're dealing with somebody like this, don't back down, don't be scared. Remember that truth is a complete defense, so stand in your truth. When you start speaking your truth, people from their past will reach out to you. Multiple people from my soon-to-be ex-husband's past have reached out to me, and they've had very similar experiences with him. So this might become a much bigger case because of the discovery process, and honestly, I'm looking forward to it because this type of deception and marriage fraud happens too often, and I'm looking forward to making an example of this man. And for all the people he has previously harmed without consequences or accountability, justice is coming. Stay healthy and wealthy.